What's up, military millionaires? I'm your host, David Perret, and today I'm excited about this episode. This is with Jason Campbell, who is a meditation expert, a Zen music expert. This guy has been practicing music and wellness for over 45 years with over 100 albums released. I was just listening to his piano, his Zen music before this, and honestly, it's probably going to replace what I listen to when I focus in the mornings. It was phenomenal. So I'm going to just kind of leave the intro at that. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Jason, and then we'll talk about how we got connected, because it's not the way I think most people would believe.
Well, hey, thanks for having me on. And I think some of the things you just said, there's a there's a lot of stories we can talk about. So let me go back to the beginning. So 45 years ago, I was 8 years old. And this was my introduction to meditation, was my piano teacher. And my first lesson, little 8-year-old boy. So I sat down and she looked at me in her thick Russian accent and she said, "Never listen to notes. Idiots listen to notes. Masters listen to the space in between the notes. Because when you listen to a note, your mind is cluttered. You hear nothing. When you listen to space or silence, your mind becomes clear, and then you hear everything." So my entry point into music was playing one note, gong, and we would listen to that note, gong, like dissolve into nothingness, and keep the attention, gong, and then we would just keep listening. And we started with that, and then a decade or so later, when I was formally trained in an ashram and I'd sit and be meditating for 4 hours, I realized I had already been meditating. We just didn't call it meditation. So we called it deep listening. And then sometime later, I said to her, "Well, what happens if you're playing fast? You have all these fast notes and there's no space." And she, looked upon me disapprovingly and said, "Wow, you're so stupid." I'm a child. That was just the training. And she said, "Then you listen to the space underneath and you dial into that space." So it's kind of like looking at a canvas as opposed to the painting. Or we could even make another analogy. It's like when you even look around in the room you're in, there's more space than form. The word exist is Latin, and it just means to stand out. To stand out of what? To stand out of nothingness or emptiness. And so you have the form, you have the emptiness, you have the sound, you have the silence, you have the painting, you have the canvas, whatever analogy you want to use. But when you focus on the silence, your mind becomes very clear. And here's an analogy. And if you're just listening without visual, I'm holding a snow globe and I shake the snow globe. And so we say, this is your head and this is your head-on thoughts. Well, guess what? The snow globe is a turbid shit show. And a lot of times between the ears becomes a turbid shit show. I think it's estimated we have like 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and 99% are the same thoughts we had yesterday. Well, when I make the snow globe still, the turbidity settles, and then we have clarity. And ultimately, at its fundamental, purest form, meditation is just stopping the voice in the head, the thinking mind. And you think it's a monk sitting on a mountain or somebody chanting Om. Sure, that's one way, but it could be on your new Ducati going whatever insane speed you're going to go on that Ducati. There's no past, there's no future.
The speed limit.
Yeah, of course. What else could it possibly be? So, but in that moment, that's a form of meditation. Or we practice what we call Zen marksman. And part of marksmanship is just you're completely there, you're completely present, you're completely in the moment. Zen archery is whatever it is. I mean, we in our organization, we do swords, we do Iedo, and we do all the types of swords, but katana is, there's the cutting of the katana, and we do it up in the mountains. And so your mind is very still. It's one pure cut, one beautiful cut, no past, no future, there's only now. And so there's many ways to get there. And we like to say there's 3 types of meditation: sitting, standing, and moving. We think of meditation as just a sitting meditation, but no, there's standing, moving. You can do all types of things. It's just having a gap in the voice in the head. How's that for a welcome intro?
Oh, that's phenomenal. I mean, that's everything you could want, because that's exactly what, how, I mean, that basically fits into how we got introduced and my thoughts on meditation. I mean, because been my struggle, right? I've thought and tried to get into meditation for years, because people are like, dude, you got to meditate. Like, you're chaotic, you're all over the place, your thoughts, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, yeah. People are like, oh, meditation's so profound. And every time I think about it, what I think of is like 10 or 15 minutes of sitting on my couch, staring at a wall, doing and thinking of nothing. And like, that just does not last for me.
Right.
Because I'm like,
That's right.
Dude, there's too much going on in life. And I'm, I don't want to say I'm ADHD, because I don't want to put that on myself. But, I'm all over the place. I got things and ideas. I'm an idea guy. I'm a visionary. I'm, the moment I sit down, it's like, it's hard. And I know that it comes with practice, but, so for me, the epiphany was months ago. We were talking about this before we recorded, when I was sitting in my ice bath and, I was just breathing, and I was just counting the breathing, right? 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out, hold for 4, whatever.
Yeah.
And I realized, wow, this is like my version of, like, this is it. I'm at peace. And for 5 to 10 minutes in this cold water, there's nothing but counting the breath and peace. And I feel it. And people are like, oh, well, there's health benefits or there's no health benefits. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I have 10 minutes of no phone, nobody can reach me, no thoughts. All I do is breathe, and it's peaceful. And that was my time. But the whole reason the way that we got connected was literally, you mentioned the Ducati. Steve Sims was on the podcast. We were talking, and he was talking about exactly this. Was he brought you up talking about meditation and how he didn't believe in it. And then you pointed out to him that he meditates every single day when he's on his motorcycle, and he can't be reached, and his helmet's on, and he's ripping around on the motorcycle. And that's his time when he's connected with nothing but him and the road.
And he's a master meditator.
Absolutely.
And so there's many paths up the mountain. And a lot of times when I work with entrepreneurs or anyone who has a busy mind, which now is most people, not everybody, a lot of times starting with the sitting meditation creates more stress than bliss. It's like you sit there, okay, what the hell is going on here? I'm supposed to be meditating, but I got emails to return. Okay, this is a waste of time, but everyone tells me I should do this. This is something that should do this. And there was a study that said that this is good for me, and everyone tells me this, but what the hell am I doing? So that becomes the inner dialogue, and it winds up being worse. It's like you get out of it with more stress. That's very, very typical. And so in that case, what we do is we don't start you with the sitting meditation. We usually start you with the breath, because then you start to go through some breath work, and the breath gives your mind something to focus on. And what you referenced is called sometimes box breathing or combat breathing. 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, 4 seconds out, and then hold for 4 seconds. And that's a great entry level breath movement to do. I mean, we have a whole series of different breath exercises. Ultimately, it's about putting you in the now, because it's always you're always here, and it's always now. And the monkey mind, you see, if we think there's a wonderful teaching in the word human being. We have the human part, which changes moment by moment. Every 7 years, every one of our cells has been completely replaced. But the being part doesn't change. So the little 8-year-old boy or 8-year-old girl that was the observer, well, that observer is still exactly the same. That's the being. So we have the blah, 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 the monkey mind, the thoughts. But then we have that which observes the thoughts. And one of the keys to, I'm going to say, some inner peace, we can call it, and we can go much deeper on this, because it goes much deeper than inner peace, but go with me here, is activating the observer. So can you activate and just watch your thoughts? Because we think, well, there's this old saying, you are not your thoughts, which is true. Your thoughts are flow through. And what I said before, most of them are the same thoughts we had yesterday. So most of the thoughts that we have were like a skipped record. We don't even need. And when you can drop those thoughts and come into no thought, even for a split second, It opens you up to a level of peace and a level of creativity that otherwise you can't get with like with a cloudy head or a full head. See, there's a big misteaching here. Everyone uses the word mindfulness. It's actually not correct. Everything in mindfulness is wrong. And most of the stuff probably that you've been taught in mindfulness is actually wrong. And let me explain this. I think it was 1912, right around there. There was a scholar, T.W. Davis, and he was transcribing or translating the Sanskrit. And a word came apart called sati. And the sati means awareness is a good word, but he translated it to be mindfulness. And then that word just stuck. But let's think about it. Mindfulness. Okay, do you really need more things in your head to create peace and to be happy? No, it's actually the opposite. We need mind emptiness. And so it's completely flipped on its head. And here's the other trick that you have to be aware of. I used to think that it was like an evil Taoist master taught everybody wrong. So everybody would say, you have to work on being more mindful. Okay, that's completely wrong. Everything about that sentence is wrong because mindful, well, let's not be mindful, let's be mind empty, which is another way of saying present or aware. And presence is not something you can work on. It's only something that you can experience in the now. So the moment you think you're working on being more present, I have to work on being more mindful, you're done. It's like a fish looking for water. If a fish is looking for water, you're never going to find water because it's all around you right now. And so what's the trick? Well, there's many tricks to stop the thinking mind. When I was a teenager, I said to my martial art instructor, I said, hey, what's Zen? He looked at me, smiled, and then sidekicked me. True story. I went flying across the dojo. I hit the wall. I fell down. He looked at me, smiled again, and walked away and said nothing. He was a great teacher. He gave me the experience of Zen. And while I was flying across the dojo, I even had a word for it. Or whatever. That was my Zen word in the moment. Because there was no past, there was no future, there was only now. Winston Churchill has a famous quote. He said, there's nothing more exhilarating than to be shot at without result. That's a form of Zen. He didn't use the word Zen, but we could use the word presence because there's no past, there's no future, there's only now. So next time you think of mindful, no, it's not mindful, it's mind empty. But a better word is just present. Just present. That's an easier word.
And term. When rounds are flying, it's exciting. I think exhilarating is a good way to put it. Don't know if I recommend that for most people.
I would agree with that. Let's do some breath work instead, shall we?
Yeah, there's definitely, I think, better ways. Maybe getting kicked across a dojo. Oh man. So all right. So okay, I'm curious. I mean, 100+ albums, or how? Obviously, you've been playing piano for a long time, and you're quite talented at it. And you've been in the. I mean, this is just sounds like been just something that's kind of consumed the vast majority of your life, the meditation and the music side of everything. But along the journey, like, I mean, I guess I'm just curious, like, how did you blend? I mean, that's not like a a career like that. Most people are like, at 8 years old, like you're just like, yeah, I'm totally gonna become like this musical meditation wizard who makes a total career out of it. Like that's not, most like not something that most people foresee as a occupation at a young age. So how did that come to be? And obviously you've done well with it. So I'm just curious, kind of, take us on the journey.
Okay. Well, growing up, I was deep into the musical arts. I somehow had good teacher karma as a child. I was just around really, really talented people that guided me. I went to music school. I went to Berklee College of Music in the 80s. So I got my whole music education very, very young. I mean, at age 17, I was touring around Europe playing the great organs and the great cathedrals. And so I did all that stuff. And then I also got deeply involved in my late teens into Zen training, into martial art training, into sword training, into yoga and the Oriental medicine, and really, we can say, Taoist spiritual cultivation. And I can remember, I think I was like 19 or 20. I remember where I was. I grew up in the Boston area. I live in Phoenix now. And I remember having this realization that it's all the same. That whether you're swinging a sword or with a baton conducting an orchestra or playing a piano or fighting, as funny as that sounds, it's all the same. It was cultivation and bringing out the spirit. See, there's many paths up the mountain and there's many ways to get there. And I just remember, because I was a assistant conductor of an orchestra out in Boston, so I'd have a baton, and I was trained in those arts. I was trained in film school, film music, and film scoring, and it was the same. Whether it's a sword or a baton, what's the difference? It just becomes an extension of you, and then this is an expression, and this is an artistic expression. So that became very clear to me. Then I took time off writing music professionally to raise a family and do all my Zen training and build an organization and grow an organization. I had to take time off to do all that. And then about 10 or so years ago, I came back to it and saying, okay, I speak these two languages. I know the language of the Tao. I know the 5 elements. I know what's called the I Ching. I understand these symbols. I understand how they represent patterns in nature. I know all of that. I speak that language. And I speak the musical language, which is 12 notes in the musical language. The technology changes, and I had to retool, because all the technology I learned on a piano with a pencil and a piece of paper. So it was before all this new technology. So, okay, I had to retool and learn a new toolkit, but the 12 notes were the same, and the human condition was the same, and the principles of vibration were all the same. Technology changes, but the moment you hit 2 rocks together, that's technology. That's music technology. So I always had the attitude that, give me 2 rocks and a tape recorder, I'll make a great album. The technology is the technology. Whatever, it has nothing to do with that. That's just the tool. It's the creativity. And so I had an organization, and I started writing the music for our organization, just for all of our members to practice to and to breathe to. So it wound up being timed music, and then I started to teach the principle of what we call the 5 elements, which is really, very simple principle. If you look around, things tend to organize themselves in 5. It's a natural number in nature. Look at your fingertips, look at your toes. Look, we have 5 vowels, we have 5 senses, and there's a decimal system. Count that on your hands. In Oriental medicine, we have 5 sets of organs, and they figured this out thousands of years ago. And instead of calling it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, let's give it a poetic name. Let's call it wood, fire, earth, metal, water. But it's not literal wood, it's not literal fire, it's a metaphor. And it's just the metaphor for the repeating pattern. For example, we have sprouting, flowering, fruiting, falling, and transforming. Okay, that's the 5. We have the 5 senses. We have sight, touch, taste, smell, and sound. And each one of those are connected with an element. It may be funny, but even in pop music, it's I want you, I miss you, I need you, let's party, and social commentary is all of pop music. And we can connect one of those elements. And in medicine, we can connect the organs to the different elements. All of acupuncture and all of Oriental medicine is based on this principle. Now, just as a fun little fact, we say, there's 5 with a mysterious 6th. We have 5 senses with the mysterious 6th sense. We have 5 vowels with the mysterious 6th. And again, back to the medicine, we have 5 sets of organs with this mysterious 6th organ. We call it pericardium and triple warmer. And so where does that come from? Well, we say 6 energies hit the ground, 5 reflect back up. And that's the reason time is done on a numeric of 6, and form is done in a numeric of 5. So we have 60 seconds, 24 hours, 12 months. Like, you can't fit time into 5. Time has to be 6 because of the 6 energies. But looking around, we fit everything into 5. So we have this 5, you'll see it repeating with this mysterious 6th that just kind of shows up. And so, okay, but back to your original question, then what was my journey? And then it just evolved. And then one album turned into 2, turned into 9, turned into 18, and then it just keeps going. And then what I do is a new album the 4th Friday of every month. I release a new album, and then I have multiple other projects. I do I'm the music director of a VR company. I do sleep music with actually a few different companies. I write all their sleep music. I'm writing the music for the Vatican NFT right now. I'm deep in the Michelangelo and all the Sistine Chapel, and, you know, creating all that into music and putting all that into sound, going back into the Latin, some of the, you know, old Latin sayings, and with choirs and operas, and it's so much fun. Yeah, and connecting it. And it's like in connecting Michelangelo's teaching of, I don't know if you're familiar with the Sistine Chapel, but there's 9 stations that he did, and connecting all of that into creation and then turning it into sound for an NFT. One of my favorite projects ever.
That's cool. It's a lot. Every 4th Friday.
Yeah.
Man, that's intense. I mean, that's a lot of...
Yeah, well, it's multiple different projects. Like this coming Friday. Now, by the time this podcast is aired, this album would have already come out, but it's called New Opera, Primal. And what we did on this project, we flipped opera on its head. Traditionally, opera is an external drama that expands. And so I thought, well, what does that look like upside down? Well, let's look at your internal drama and dissolve it. And it's dissolved through deep listening. So I took this Vedic mantra, very old mantra of the planets. There's 9 planets according to the Vedics, and each one has a mantra. Think of it as like 9 gods, 9 mythological gods, and they each have a story. They have a strength. They have a weakness. They're not all good. It's like Marvel characters. Almost. There's some dark ones among the 9, and we scored them in these little 3-minute short stories, all but not a story is an English story. It's a mantra, so it lets your imagination and your mind go to start to drop into the now. But that was one project. We have a Zen Chill project coming out, and most of those albums are Zen Piano, and Zen Piano is a translation of a 6,000-year-old language called the I Ching, and that's why it kind of writes itself the way I look at it. It was written 6,000 years ago. I translate it. When Michelangelo would make a statue, he would say, I didn't make anything. All I did was remove everything that wasn't the statue. And the statue revealed itself.
Yep.
So I have the same approach. Like, it's already there, and we call that addition through subtraction. And there's a great life teaching. And the life teaching is that we call it the sword and the flute. At any given time in your life, there's something you need to cut. There's something you need to drop. There's something that's weighing you down. And whatever it is, it could be a thought pattern. It could be a relationship. It could be 10 pounds. It could be something big. It could be a business, a big relationship, a small relationship. Or then we say, oh, if yours just so cool and your life is so together, maybe you just need a haircut. Cut your fingernails. I don't care what it is, but every garden constantly needs to be cut. So there's something in your life you need to cut always. And the other metaphor is the flute, which means what in your life is working? What do you need to pump more life into? Because of all the things, there's usually at least an 80-20. You know, if you're working on 5 things, one of them is probably working better than the other 4. You know, you might have 5 properties, and one of them is kicking butt, and the other 4, maybe, or 3 are okay, and one's weighing you down. I mean, I'm just making this up right here. But what is it in your life that you need to just breathe more, put more juice into, put more focus into? So that's the sword and the flute, because when we're first born, we're met with the sword and the flute. Is a metaphor. We're met with the flute is the breath. We take a breath, and then the sword comes. Cut the umbilical cord. Because the opposite of death is not life. The opposite of death is birth. Life has no opposite. So with death, it creates a birth. Lightning hits a tree. boom, there's a death, but then there's this birth that happens as a result. So in your life, when you cut something, you have a death. I mean, maybe I'm overselling the drama here if I use the word death and ending, but if you, like the metaphor, you cut it, but that gives room for something else to grow. And it ties into even what I was saying in the beginning with your thoughts. Like most thoughts we don't need. So you drop your thoughts and it gives life to something new, something creative, something that you otherwise wouldn't have had if you didn't have the space for it.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, it's cool. And I think the Zen music, like the Zen piano thing, so I listen to, when I'm trying to focus or trying to get into flow or trying to get work done, I always liked music. And somebody pointed me towards this app called Brain.fm at one point, which is just like binaural beats that you put into your headphones. And because I would always, I have a very interesting, almost eclectic taste of music, which is just like, I listen to everything pretty much. So my assistant used to make fun of me because I'd be in here rocking out to like, Mulan or Disney, and then just like all kinds of crazy stuff. 1 minute it's like metal, and then the next minute it's like Mongolian throat singing, and then I'll just whatever. But I realized like anything with vocals throws you off. You can't really. It's hard to function if there's lyrics.
Yep, you got it.
Your brain wants to listen to the words, even if it's in another language. You're trying to, and so when I was listening to years before the recording, I was like, oh man, I could totally listen to this while I'm working, because it's exactly like what, brain, where it's totally out of mind. But like, if it's quiet, my brain starts to wander.
Yeah.
But it's gotta be just non-lyrical, music, classical music or something that, but yes, I'm definitely gonna keep checking out your YouTube channel.
And what you said is actually really, really profound, that if you're doing any type of meditation or any type of deep work, you don't want to listen to any music with lyrics in your native tongue or lyrics that you understand, because that distracts you and it puts someone else's thoughts in your head, as opposed to having like your own thoughts, or, creating, tapping into whatever you want to call it, universal thoughts or God thoughts or whatever word, flow state, whatever word we want to use. So it's really profound, because that's really true. And sometimes you go to a yoga studio and and they blast some whatever music that has lyrics. It's the worst thing you can possibly do.
Yeah.
In a yoga studio, somehow a lot of the younger teachers nowadays lost that point. I see that everywhere. They do these playlists with everything with lyrics, and it takes you completely out of the now, and it takes you out of your body. So then part of the Zen piano, and I have a YouTube channel that does that as well, and I have a bunch of stuff on it. I do New Music Tuesday, every new music on the YouTube channel. And they're kind of longer, like 3-hour songs, basically, that's really designed for the background. You put it, or that might be by the ocean or by the campfire. And it's designed to just drop you into the now. It's not designed to sit there and actively listen to it. It's more for your subconscious mind. While you're doing something else, you put it on and you just get a little more creative, a little more still. You have almost less thoughts, or there's more space in your thoughts. And that's the reason that music, it was written for that purpose. So that's a real good observation.
Well, I will be listening to that, because that's, most of my, when I'm thinking, I usually have that kind of music in the background, like those really long kind of, just music playlists. So we'll be trying yours out this week. Okay, so I know this is like a total left field shift, and we'll probably come back to this, but this is a real estate podcast, so I gotta ask. You gotta tell me the story for it. Cleater, right? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, not only does he, write 100 albums and meditate and fight ninjas with swords and all the other stuff, but apparently he buys ghost towns. So
well, I've been.
I want to hear the story.
And I've always played in real estate.
Oh, okay,
so
cool.
I love real estate. Playing it, I've had great successes in real estate. I've gotten my ass kicked a couple of times.
Me too.
No, the greatest champions of the world are not undefeated.
Nope.
Like whoever wins the World Series lost a lot of games winning the world. So in real estate, sometimes you get your ass just completely destroyed, and it's happened to me. So I've had a few projects.
I always try to remind my kids that I'm like, the best baseball players in the world don't even get on base half the time. Like they bat like 300. They
great. Fail 7 out of 10 times, and they're the best in the world.
Best in the world
at it. So sometimes in business is the same way, and sometimes in real estate. What I said before, you might have a few different projects, and one just does really well. And here's the funny thing is, because I've had different projects that it wasn't like I was super smart in this one project that worked and I was super stupid in this other project. No, I put the same amount of mind and carefulness and consideration. And guess what? One of them, I got lucky. The other one, I got unlucky.
I love that.
Go figure.
I love that so much because survivor bias is so real. And I love when we see people get like super successful and people are like, oh my God, they did all these things. And it's like, other people did those same things.
Yeah,
that's
right.
That's right. It's just like the idea that like, when you see somebody survive cancer and they didn't do chemo, and it's like, well, obviously chemo doesn't work. It's like, well, here's people who survived cancer. They did do chemo, and the opposite's true on both sides. Like, and there's examples of that in every walk of life. Like survivor biases is definitely something to be very aware of.
It's so true. This was maybe 2-3 years ago. We did this. We did this build. We did this flip, and everything worked out perfectly in this flip. It was we bought land. We put up some prefabs, and we sold them. And this was when the market was hot, and we bought the land before the market got hot. Luck. How do you even know? And we put in these orders for these prefabs before all the prices doubled before the pandemic. Luck. Okay. And then we sold them, and then our profits were, I think, 3 times higher than we projected our profits were going to be. And I have a friend of mine who's been a builder for 25 years or so. I mean, he builds mansions, he builds everything. The man's brilliant. And I love what he said to me. He said, Jason, just make sure, don't confuse luck with skill.
Yep. Yeah.
And he was so right. I mean, we had to be skilled. We had to pull it off. There was a lot of skill that was included, or that happened. But then what happened is then 2 years later, 2, 3, whatever it was, market conditions changed. And then actually this silly thing, we wound up just selling the land because it didn't make sense to put the house on it. Everything changed. And so, okay. And we had our run, and we did good on most of them. The land, we lost a little bit of money, but whatever. We won the game. Yep. And so we lost on that. But again, it comes down to market conditions.
Yeah.
It was. And people it was 3% interest rates at the time. So everyone was buying. People were, and we could, charge, market rates were high at the time is the point. But okay, so that's back to the real estate. So one of our projects, this came about maybe a year and a half ago. I saw a news article for a town for sale, Clear, Arizona. I thought, wow, a town is for sale. How funny. I didn't even know you could buy a town. And so I copied the link and I sent it to Joe Polish, who runs the Genius Network. I'm a member of Genius Network. And I said, want to buy a town? Ha, ha, ha. It was a joke. Immediately he texted me back, well, maybe. Like, what? I don't want to buy a town. What am I going to do with a town? What do I know about running a town? What does that even mean, running a town? And then 6 months later, 8 months later, we bought the town.
Oh, man.
Well, some of the considerations, because and there's 2 other partners, Michael Leone and Ben Hootie are the partners in the town. And as we were thinking about circling the wagon, as we're thinking, do we yes, no, do we do it? One thought I had, well, it's about an hour from my residence. So how many times in a life, or how many opportunities do you have to purchase a town that's 1 hour from your residence? I figured 1 at most.
Yeah.
Like if I passed on this, then not likely I would have that opportunity again. So we purchased the town. And so what does that even mean? So the first, like when you're going through real estate, here's what I find. And I was taught this by people a lot wealthier than me with real estate. The first thing you determine, you do all your analysis, and then you come up with, do I acquire the asset? Yes or no? Simple. And if the answer is no, then you move on. If the answer is yes, then full steam ahead, all locked and loaded, get the asset, acquire the asset. Because even acquiring Cleater, there's a whole drama backstory. It wasn't so easy. We had a guru on our team who knows real estate much better than I do, who is the one that actually had to acquire it. That took some skill, and I got to learn and watch during that whole ordeal. And then once we acquired it, this was very unique, getting a town. Usually if you acquire a piece of real estate, you kind of know what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
So this was a little unique. We didn't really know what we were going to do. It's just like, okay, just get it and figure it out. And it's going to be a blank slate. Like we're going to just have an artist, or Joe likes to call it a skunkworks project, where we're just going to figure it out as we go and just make it up as we go along. And that's what we've been doing. And so what we've been doing in the town, it was an old ghost town, a handful of residents, 18 structures. There's a bar, an active bar. There's a store. There was an old schoolhouse that hadn't been used since the 40s in the schoolhouse, and about 14 other structures that are there of houses, and people were renting it out. And so what we've been doing is restoring it. We, graded this whole area. We are restoring right now. There's a team up there restoring the schoolhouse. There's all this old mining equipment that's just out laying about. Amazing what these people used to do for mining, the physical manual labor that they had to do for the mining. So we're turning all the mining pieces into artwork, and we're building this giant fence with all these mining pieces in front of it. So when you drive up, there's a massive piece of art, and we're restoring the schoolhouse. And we've already done events there, kind of Burning Man-ish type events.
Oh, cool.
That we're doing there. There's a live bar. So if you go there in the summer, it gets a little hot, so it's not as busy. But in the winter, if you go there on a Saturday, you'll see 300 people there hanging out in the bar. So it's a very active ghost town. So when we say ghost town, because it's right on the way geographically to another town called Crown King. If you're not in this area, that won't mean anything, but you have to pass through Cleater to get to Crown King. And so there's hundreds of cars going by it, and ATVs. It's a dirt road. It was the old railroad is what it was. And we were the first ever to get water. 700 feet down, we got water. We inherited an old contract with the United States Forest Service, designed by pre-World War II railroad engineers. 3 miles of pipe, somehow almost duct taped together, like 1-inch pipe uphill. It's a miracle. I look at it, it's like, this shouldn't work. This defies the law of physics. And somehow it's worked for 100 years, really. It goes uphill. It's not potable water, but it was giving some type of water. But we got real water on our first try. I don't know if you've ever dug a well. But
I'm on well water.
Okay.
I wouldn't dig it, but I mean, it's there.
Well, we got it. And so we're doing all these projects with it. So that's the dirt project. But then we're doing other creative projects. We're the first town ever to have an NFT. We had a successful NFT launch. We have the town in virtual reality. As far as I know, it's the first town to ever be in virtual reality. We are starting, should be later on this year, a Cleater Sheriff Department. And here's a teaching of the sheriff. Okay, there's an old concept. It's called the 3 treasures. I mean, if you Google the 3 treasures, once you get past Pirates of the Caribbean, you'll find this. And it very simply means we're made up of 3 things: matter, energy, and consciousness. So for example, matter is everything you can see, touch, and feel. The energy is breath, emotion, chi, prana, ki, ghee, bioelectrical energy, like all the things that run in that range. And then the consciousness is the eternal I am. So if we have H2O, well, it shows up in ice, water, and vapor, solid liquid vapor. And so it's the same idea. So we're the same construct, but there's a physical component to us. There's like an emotional component, and then we can say spiritual component, or even if we want to get less esoteric, just say the thoughts. So we have those three building blocks, but it's all the same matter because it's all us. Well, 5 points in a sheriff badge, and the sheriff is traditionally the protector of persons and property. Okay, we all get that. However, pain doesn't always come from a bad guy trying to attack you. It can come from stress. It can come from emotional imbalance. It can come from mental turbidity. So the true warrior defends on all fronts. And so on the back of the sheriff badge is the 5 elements, what we spoke about before: wood, fire, earth, metal, water, which is the metaphor for protecting on all fronts. So it's a different kind of town, different kind of sheriff, different arrangement of how we're organizing this town.
I like it. That's pretty rad. We'll have to come through.
And I'll admit, we're making all this up as we go along. That's the other part of it.
Geographically, is Cleator? So I'm trying to think. I feel like I've been through Crown King. Is that like up towards the mountains, like northeast of?
Yeah, if you go up to Phoenix, like right in the middle of Phoenix, it's called the I-17, and you get off on the Bumblebee exit, which you are going west. So it's west of the I-17, like kind of northwest, 12 miles of dirt road, and you're there. And it's a really cool thing because it if you show up with a 6-shooter and spurs, you'll fit right in. And when you go up to Crown King, it's a very famous mountains, the Bradshaw Mountains. You're going up a switchback, which was the old railroad. So you're going up this ancient railroad. They took out the railroad. And there's one point where, I don't know, only one car fits in the road at a time. So if a car's coming the other way, you have to stop. And you can see where they blast it out with dynamite. So the rock just goes straight up the sides. It's really cool. And it's so beautiful. And you feel like you're in 100 years ago.
That's awesome. I'm trying to figure out if I've actually driven through here, but I can't. I don't know. I've driven through some pretty interesting places in Arizona. I do a lot of road tripping, and
You might have, though. Crown King is the elevation is high. It's around 5,000 feet in Crown King, so you have to go up the mountain.
Yeah. I've been all over Flagstaff and Phoenix and a bunch of mountains around, so there's a pretty good chance. So
I have a feeling you might have stopped at the Cleator Bar. It's called the Cleator Bar and Yacht Club.
If not, I will now.
That's right.
Swing through it. I'm going to be like, I know the owner. Well, or at least I don't know what your official title is.
Oh, you can say sheriff or owner. Yeah, well, the sheriff. Yeah.
Sheriff Jason.
Joe Polish is the mayor.
Oh my gosh, I have a new goal now. My goal was to buy an island, but now it's just I just want to be my own sheriff. Sheriff Dave.
Well, we'll make you a deputy. We have that's coming up next year with the department. We have badges and everything. We have it all set up.
I love it. That's super cool. I mean, and the thing is, like, it's just fun. That's what's cool. It's just fun.
Yeah.
Because you can make, like, the thing that everybody hates about, like, government and cities and towns and whatever, like, none of that matters because you guys are running the show and you could just, like, we're gonna have fun. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's like, whatever.
Well, the town is older than the state.
Wow.
And so the town was founded in 1864. Arizona was incorporated in 1912. So it's, I mean, boy, that's a whole other discussion, the legal rights and the legalities of it. And it's back and forth from county viewpoint. Oh no, we're in charge but we have it's almost like Native American land, how there's different types of rights because it is going into what's called a land patent as opposed to a deed. And a patent is like pre-incorporated of the state. And I forget which president signed the land patent of Cleator. So that's a whole legal discussion. But then you get into how much do you want to fight the county and claim your rights versus just deal with them and become friends with them. So there's always that balance of
you're like, we just want to serve alcohol and have our own sheriffs. Leave us alone.
That's right. We want to truly turn the town into a place of good. Joe has a whole foundation, like Genius Foundation of artists for addicts. And so we're doing all types we'll have art shows that we'll do up there. We have, again, back to the Burning Man-ish shows that we'll have events because we have this whole area. We can handle 1,000 people in that area. And then we're fixing up this old schoolhouse. We found all old like voting booths from the 40s in the schoolhouse. We found old superintendent notices. We did. And even when we were building it, there was this long wire or this long pole up the side of the house, of the side of the schoolhouse. And the contractor said, that has no purpose. Why don't I just take it down? Or the builder. And I'm thinking, no, just wait, don't do anything yet. What is that? We couldn't figure out what it was. Finally, we figured it out. It was the old telegraph pole. So I said, oh no, we're keeping that. I'm not cutting down a telegraph pole. Are you kidding me? This is awesome. I don't even have a fax machine anymore. A telegraph pole? When's the last time you saw one of those?
Oh my gosh. That's so cool. I can see it all now with the county. You guys are going to end up being like, all right, look, we'll pay taxes. Your sheriffs can show up and arrest people. We just want to party. All right. Just leave us alone. Oh man, the new hoodlums in town. That's so funny. It's funny because I have a friend who owns a missile silo in Kansas, and so I can just envision.
Oh, cool.
At some point in life, one of us is going to try to a town, because they have, he's got like this Atlas missile silo or whatever. But then there's all these different types of missile silos that were built, and there's this one type that has like they had 3 different silos and like a mile of tunnels between them all, and like a barracks. And like, in theory, if you can get a hold of one of those silos, then you can turn it into like an Airbnb with like 3 different underground silos and like all these different tunnels you can like drive through. And like, my wheels, when I saw that, wheels are turning. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna buy one of those someday and like build my own little underground village.
Now I see, when we started this conversation, I didn't know that I wanted a missile silo. Now I want a missile silo. Like, when I woke up this morning, I didn't know that was on my list. Now it's on my list.
Oh, the thing's crazy. It's my most viral video on TikTok is me running around with a beer showing off his silo.
Oh, wow.
It goes like 18 stories underground, and there's some dude who turned him into a bunch of like survival condos and sells them for like $500,000 a pop.
Yeah.
And he's got like 13 condos and 1 silo or something like that. And it's kind of crazy what you can do with them. But my buddy's just planning to Airbnb it, and it's pretty wild, pretty cool.
Yeah, well, that's actually really cool. And let me also, I will, I'm going to perhaps I'm going to speak to our listener right now, and of a little reminder. And we're talking about this crazy stuff in towns and silos and real estate and all these things. Well, let's remember that comparison is the thief of joy. And it's very easy. Like, well, that's it. When you compare, you tend to get upset. There's the joke is, what is it? Instagram makes you depressed and Twitter makes you angry. And you go on to Instagram and get depressed. And I remember I have a friend of mine. She's very, very smart. She's an investor, very, very successful. She grew up in a third world country, very, very poor. Like, her and a lot of sisters shared this little room, tiny room. They didn't have any stuff. And she said to me, it's an interesting story. She said, you know what? I didn't realize I was poor until later on in life. I didn't feel poor. I had my sisters, I had my family, I had everything, and we just did our stuff. And I didn't realize it, which is an interesting thing because she had no contrast. I think about a kid today in that same situation. They get on Instagram and they see these people trying to show off and say, oh, look at me and look at all my things. Look at how important I am because I have possession of things. And then all of a sudden you feel worse because you don't have all those things. And hey, there's always someone that has more things, more stuff, more toys, more whatever than you. And there's always people that have less things, toys, stuff, and whatever than you. And ultimately, like the mastery in, kind of emotional mastery, Zen mastery is whatever. Build your own thing, build your own world, okay? And whatever your world is, because, okay, I was taught this as a child. And go with me here. This is not my shirt. It's the shirt I wear. I don't mean legally. Legally, sure, it's my shirt. Okay, it's mine, me, mine. But at some point, me and this shirt are going to part ways. Okay? This isn't my house. It's the house I live in. Again, not legally. It's not my town. I guess it's the town I run. I guess what we can say. Or it's the town I play in. It's not my car. It's the car I drive. But then we can even take it a step further. And we can say, it's not my body. It's the body I live in. Because at some point, you give it back. It's a rental. You don't own anything. You don't own shit. From a spiritual viewpoint, that again, not legal. And so all your things, all your stuff, all your possessions, you got to make sure that you own them and they don't own you. Because I know people and I train people. I train people that have a lot more zeros on their balance sheet than I do and are a lot less happy. When we all tend to think, if I could only double my income and add a zero to my net worth, then I'd be happy. Bull. Nonsense. I've never seen it happen. You have to find the not even joy. Happiness is a weird thing because you chase happiness. And if you're always happy, you're never happy. So you need a little dollop of its opposite, of whatever word we want to use for the opposite of happiness to create happy. Show me somebody that's always happy. So you can't be always happy, but you can be present and you can be peaceful. So you can have the silence or the stillness that's underneath the emotion, the happy, sad, up, down, high, low, angry, grief, worry, and all that stuff, because we all have them, and I have all those emotions. You have to. There's anyone that tells you they don't, either a complete psychopath like a lizard, a reptile, trying to sell you something. Oh, no, really? You'll just be happy all the time. Yeah, okay. Or it's completely delusional. So no, I've been practicing this decades. I still have the ups and the downs. It's going to happen. But when you can find the stillness underneath, you can have the peace. And then the game of form of gain and loss is a game. And here's how I was taught. I was taught as a kid. I had a Zen master say to me, he taught me the laws of abundance and the laws of wealth. And this is what he told me. Sometimes pond full, sometimes pond empty. Pond full, okay. Pond empty, okay. And he left. He let me contemplate that teaching. And it's really profoundly true of just, can you stay steady? The game of gain and loss. Of, you have successes, you have whatever, just stay steady. And at some point you give it all back. At some point you give your body back. You give all your stuff back. So as you accumulate stuff, let's be smart. Have smart real estate deals, build abundance, build your sanctuary, build your lifestyle. Absolutely. Of course. What else are you going to do? But can you have the peace underneath and at the same time, well, remember to include you in your portfolio, because we train people that, again, are very, very wealthy, but a lot of them forgot to include themselves in their portfolio. And the person with good health has 1,000 wishes. The person with poor health has 1 wish.
Yeah. Man, that's good. And that's such an important lesson. I mean, all of that really, but to sum it all up, you're right. Comparison is the thief of joy. I mean, that's it. Just be present.
Yeah. Be present, and also with a dollop of gratitude.
Yeah.
And it's funny, even if your life is a shit show, okay, guess what? All lives are shit shows. And every life has some part that it's a shit show. And everyone does it. Yeah. I've never seen it that it's not. And usually when someone tells you it's not, they're trying to sell you something. And then it's dark and it's disingenuous. No. Or tell you that a business. I had one of my students, she was really frustrated. Because of her business and some things didn't go right and everything. She's like, I just want it to run smoothly. When is there ever not problems? I said, well, it's kind of like the saying, okay, let me back up. Don't worry about being at one with the universe. You have death and all of eternity to be at one with the universe. Enjoy your separateness now. And with separateness comes issues. So when is a business ever all set? It's not. When are you ever all set? You're not. My car's in the shop. I drive a Raptor. I blew some stuff out. Guess what? And it's always, it's good. Then it comes out and then something else will blow out and I go in the shop. Well, guess what? We're in the shop. I have to get a crown in my tooth. So it's like, wow, I'm in my Raptors in the shop, then I got to go in the shop. They're going to drill in my tooth into a crown. It's like all form constantly falls apart because we all suffer from the same fate of impermanence. And that's okay. That's the beauty of it. That's where you find the joy. If there was no impermanence, you couldn't have the joy. You see, the only reason the Super Bowl works is because there's a built-in tragedy. What are you going to do? Give two teams participation trophies? No. For one team, it's the most greatest, glorious, we did it, blah, blah, blah. But for the other team, it's more tragic for the team that loses the Super Bowl than for the team that comes in last place.
Yep.
Far more tragic. But it only works. The triumph only works with the tragedy. You can't have, so it's like in comics, the superhero only works with the supervillain. Mm. What do we call a superhero with no supervillain? A weirdo in tights. The other answer to that is unemployed. So everything needs its opposite. You have to have that. And that's just the polarity of life. That's the laws of nature that we have. So back to just having things. Don't be moved by things. Like accumulate your stuff, build your sanctuary. Sometimes you might have situations where you have too much stuff, and then I call that conquering more than you can occupy. You conquer more than you can occupy. I once in my life, I had a 7,500 square foot house. For some people, you might think that's a big house. For some people, you might think it's a small house. What I learned when I had a 7,500 square foot house is I don't need a 7,500 square foot house. It was too big. There wound up being rooms I never used. I conquered more than I could occupy. And so, no, I have a smaller, I'm happier in a smaller place. 4,100 square feet. That's where I live now. That's perfect for me. But even then I have a room. I have a foyer right there next door. It's a beautiful place outside, but I'm never in it. Only time I'm in it is to clean it. Silly analogy, or silly example, but conquering and occupying. So you don't need to keep having more and more and more. You just figure out what you're enough. That's the bottom line. Figure out what your enough number is. Remember, comparison is the thief of joy.
No, I love it. I love it. It is awesome. And that being said, we are right around the hour mark. So where can people get a hold of you if they'd like to reach out? Well, for one, you got to plug your YouTube channel because I'm not the only one who's going to want to listen to your music. And I'm going to obviously link it in the show notes. But outside of that, where can people get a hold of you if they'd like to learn more about your meditation practices? Okay, YouTube is a real easy one. Jason Campbell Zen Music at YouTube. You can go to zenpiano.com. There's information there. There's also the training. You go to zenwellness.com. Let's see, some other ones. Cleater. You can go to What's Your Cleater, CLEATOR. And the What's Your Cleater is a metaphor of doing something that is beyond your comfort zone. That's what we call it. And we have the whole NFT. We have all the Cleater work that we do there. So that's a good start. Those and we didn't even talk about the ranch. We have a 400-acre ranch that we do our training at. Oh my God. Well. Let's maybe do that next time. We'll talk about some of the cool stuff we're doing in there. I love real estate. So this is a good... real estate and guns are two things I really like. You and I both. So I'm in the right place. Yeah, absolutely. We'll be back on. We'll talk about the ranch for sure. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Jason, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun, David. Absolutely.